When you're trying to sell your book on social media, what is the best way to hook in readers? You have just a line or two to sell your book to someone before they decide to swipe past your post and forget about your book forever. Self-publishing is more accessible than ever. More people are self-publishing and writing books than ever, and readers are widely accepting that self-published books are legitimate books. However, the market is more flooded than ever, and it's harder than ever to market your book and get your book into the hands of readers. Today we're talking about how annotating my own book was a very effective strategy for finding out how to come up with hooks for the book, and some other methods you can use to write hooks for your book as well. Hello everyone, my name is Mandy. I'm an author, the creator of the Book Launch Planner series, and I also have courses on book cover design and book formatting. I make weekly videos on the business of being an author, so if that sounds good to you, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon. You can also become a YouTube member to get early access to videos as well as behind the scenes content. Posting about your book on social media is one of the most effective marketing strategies, but it's not as simple as just posting every day and hoping something catches. There's very specific strategies to it, and those strategies vary depending on what platform you're posting to and even the genre of your book. And while we're not talking about those extremely specific strategies today, we are talking about writing a hook for your book. Because while trends and platforms may change, one thing stays the same, and that's having a good hook. A hook is something that makes your readers stop to listen. It quite literally hooks them into the story. It's something quick, catchy, and makes them stop scrolling. But how exactly do we make readers want more? The essential thing that works for most readers is that you need to trigger an emotion. This can be any emotion, good or bad. This is because emotions are a type of universal fantasy. Now, if you've never heard of the term universal fantasy before, I highly recommend checking out the book Universal Fantasies by T. Taylor. I read it, loved it, am obsessed with it, and implement this strategy of universal fantasies when writing my books. But whatever universal fantasies you included during your writing process, you can take those universal fantasies and use them as marketing strategies. Now, universal fantasies aren't book tropes. Book tropes are a plot point, whereas universal fantasies is the reasoning why people are in love with something. And 9 times out of 10, it's because it makes readers feel something. Whether it just makes them feel relatable to the story, or it makes them feel anger or sadness or anything in between. Typically, universal fantasies make readers feel like they are in the shoes of the character. And this is something very powerful. And if we can lock into this piece of universal fantasy during the marketing process, it's even better. So when it comes to figuring out what universal fantasies are in your book, you need to ask yourself what emotions are in your book. What parts of your story make your readers feel angry, sad, lonely, heartbroken, grief, and there's so many other emotions that your book could have as well. I'm going to be sharing a couple of hooks from my own book, Sparks in Iceland. It's going to be releasing to Kickstarter on July 8th as special edition paperback and deluxe edition hardcover, and then it will also be releasing as just a regular book in September. If you want to learn more about the book, make sure to follow the project on Kickstarter. Anyways, I'm going to share with you one of the first books I came up with for this book, and as a general reference, this book is a sweet romance, and it's a friends to lovers romance. What happens when you find out your best friend has a crush on you right before you go on vacation together to Iceland? You set him up on a date with another girl and find out a little too late that you might have feelings for him after all. So the emotion that is triggered here is awkwardness. Most people have probably experienced when someone has a crush on you, but you absolutely do not feel the same way about them. So that's one emotion that is triggered. But then another emotion that is triggered is a bit of jealousy as well. But later on, she does realize she has feelings for this guy, but he's already moved on to another girl. In fact, it's the girl she tried to set him up with. And that's just a flurry of emotions, which is exactly what we're looking for when we're writing a hook for a book. Now, that was a hook focusing on the overarching story. You can also write hooks based on individual scenes of your book. You accidentally read a text message that reveals your guy best friend has feelings for you, and now you think you might feel the same way. When you finally confront him, this is his response. It was a joke. So this is a hook where we have some context, and then we also have an actual quote from the book to kind of drive home the impact. The emotions here are a bit of shame and also a bit of heartbreak. This allows readers to step into the shoes of our main character. Our main character who knows that her guy best friend has a crush on her, and now she thinks that she might also feel the same way, but when she finally gets up the nerve to confront him about it, he responds with, "It was just a joke." And how crushing is that? And those are some pretty strong emotions that will hook a reader in. And besides triggering emotions, you can also go ahead and just trigger readers to ask some questions where you give them enough context where they kind of understand what's going on, but you give them things to ask about where readers hear your hook and they're just like, wait, what's going on? So here's an example of that. This is actually a direct quote from my book, Sparks in Iceland, and it just happened to work really well as a hook on its own. And this is actually dialogue from the book too. You realize this is weird, right? Not just that you and your best not girlfriend are sharing rooms together on vacation, but that while on vacation you're going out with another girl. This makes readers stop and go, wait, what's going on? So essentially they realize that there's a guy and there's a girl and they're on vacation together, but they're not boyfriend, girlfriend, they're just friends hanging out, and he's going out with another girl. What? And it's just confusing enough to make readers either comment about it on the social media post asking for more context, or maybe they just go ahead and click to read about the book, or they go ahead and buy the book because they're like, I have to know how this ends. This sounds messy. So now that I've given you a couple of examples of hooks, I want to give you guys my biggest tip on how to actually come up with hooks. And that is to annotate your own book. So I created a digitally annotated copy of my book for my Kickstarter that I'm running. I printed an early edition of my book. I read it just like a reader. I went through it page by page and I annotated it. I didn't look at it from an author's perspective. I looked at it from a reader's perspective. I wasn't trying to edit it. I wasn't trying to change the story. I was trying to give commentary on the book and figure out some things that I thought were funny or that were important or some important quotes. In terms of annotations, I ended up giving commentary on the story. I gave some context to inspiration behind specific details in the book. I included some doodles in the margins because it was fun, and I pointed out some favorite lines or quotes, and I also gave some fun facts about Iceland. Now, obviously, when I annotated my book, I was annotating it for readers as something to be a part of my Kickstarter, so a lot of the types of annotations I did, you won't need to do. When you're annotating your own books for the sole purpose of coming up with hooks, you want to annotate it in a way that just focuses on the story, specifically points of the story that really trigger an emotion. And by the way, if you want to get an annotated copy of my book, like I said, it will be a part of the Kickstarter. So again, please make sure to follow the Kickstarter. It goes live on July 8th. By the time I finished annotating my book, I realized that I had essentially created a cheat sheet for myself in terms of how to market the book. I did not go into the annotating as a goal of figuring out quotes that could be marketable. I went into it just trying to make something fun for my readers. In the process of doing that, I realized what scenes in my book were pivotal and especially relatable, because sometimes that is the best thing that is marketable, is relatability. And when you go ahead and you annotate your book, you really need to step back as an author and step in as a reader. And I found the most helpful way of doing this was to look at it as if I was preparing for book club. I don't know if you guys are a part of a book club. I am. But when I read a book for book club, I tend to take notes on it so that when we meet up later, I know what things I want to discuss and I remember specific scenes from the book. And a lot of things that you are going to to want to discuss are typically things that triggered a strong emotion, whether it was a scene that made you really hate a character or a scene that made you cry. It tends to go back to emotions. Anyways, if you have other ways that you come up with creative hooks for your book, make sure to share them in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. This felt like a little bit of a game changer to me, and it made me look at my book from a different perspective. I feel like as an author, we're so close to our books that we forget how to look at it as a reader. And that is the most important thing sometimes, is to have the point of view of a reader. So again, if you have any other additional tips, share them in the comments below. Otherwise, that is it for this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.